All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jesse Randall. I am the CEO and founder of Sweater, and we are the hosts of Founder Saga, which is where we find ourselves today. We are grateful to be able to have Gregg Scoresby with us to be able to help tell a little bit of the founder stories that we like to pull out. Really our purpose in this as we look around is, we wanted to be able to tell more stories that paint the realistic picture of what it's like to really get a company off the ground in those early stages. It's when it's the hardest to do. So we're really grateful for Gregg to be here. I think that Gregg's got an incredible story and some really unique elements of experiences that he's gone through. So Gregg, welcome. We're really glad to have you here.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Jesse. I was glad you reached out and connected and love what you're doing. Love the storytelling that we need to do more of as founders.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, this is going to be a good one. So let's jump right in. Gregg, I haven't even said the name yet, but you're the CEO of Campus Logic. And we're based out of Arizona, but why don't you give us the quick pitch? You'll do it far better than I do. So give us the quick rundown of what Campus Logic does for the world, and then give us an idea of your background along with that, if you'd like, and kind of where the company's at today. Give us the big picture.
Sure. So Campus Logic is a B2B SaaS company selling a suite of products to colleges, universities, so that they can make the financial aid experience mobile, simple, personalized. So we're creating this category we call student financial success. And anybody who knows anything about the financial aid process, they will use words like complex, difficult. Sometimes they'll use expletives to describe it as well. But it's hard. It's hard for students, hard for parents and families to navigate the labyrinth of all the financial aid process. And that includes the process of scholarships. You've got private scholarships, you've got institutional, like endowed scholarships, you've got other institutional grant aids that comes from colleges, universities, you've got federal grants like a Pell Grant, you've got federal loans, these loans that come from the federal government, you've got private loans, you've got all sorts of payment mechanisms. Sometimes there's even installment programs, but it's a combination of scholarships, grants, and loans that we try to make the process easy. And so most consumers would never know our name because we become the digital storefront for the financial aid office at about 750 colleges, universities in the United States.
Wow, 750. I don't even think that I knew that there were that many colleges and universities.
It's funny you say that. In the early days when I was capital raising, we had like 30 or 40 customers, and what I concluded when I talked to investors early on, like the early investors, a lot of investors know a few names from the Ivy League. Those are the names that they know, right? Harvard, Stanford, Cornell, those types of schools. And sorry, not Stanford. They're not. I meant to say Harvard, Yale, Cornell, and the others in the Ivy League. And then they know a few others that are highly selective, like a Stanford. And then they know all the colleges that play every Saturday in football, right? Those are the 100 or so colleges that people know. What a lot of people don't realize is that if you just look at California community colleges alone, there's 115 or so California community colleges. 10% of all higher ed students. So every college student goes to a California community college. And so, schools that a lot of us have never heard of unless you live in California, and they have a wonderful community college system. So, and then on top of that, you've got all sorts of colleges, universities of all different sizes. There's about, between 5,000 and 6,000 degree granting institutions in the US that
Wow,
people would know about.
that's amazing. I really didn't know that there were that many. Little known fact, I actually worked for the admissions in the financial aid office for 4 years at Utah State University. That was my scholarship going through school. So I feel like connection with you here, Gregg. This world is very complicated.
It's funny you used Utah State. Utah State, it was one of the very first well-known brands that started to use one of our products. And we developed a good relationship there with both the financial aid office. I think they were innovative and thoughtful. They had a CIO there too. I think his name's Eric Hawley. Eric did such a good job. He was sort of what I would call a new school CIO. He was very supportive of what the business units or the divisions, what the colleges within the university were wanting to do with technology. And he viewed his role more as supporting what they wanted to do. And some kind of old school CIOs are a little more, hey, why don't you ask me and I'll tell you if it's okay on what you buy. But there's been this real higher education's experience, what I think most industries are experiencing, this consumerization of SaaS, where you've got colleges, where you've got departments buying their own software. So yeah, higher education is a really interesting industry. It's undergoing a digital transformation, and this year, like every industry, has only accelerated the digital transformation that's happening there. So there's a lot of exciting things happening in higher education. And one of my favorite things about the industry, you didn't ask this, but I'll this is sort of why I love this industry. I've never met a more purpose-driven group of people than in higher education. So you meet people at our customers, and they are a group of purpose-driven people. They love students. They love helping people make progress, and they also view their role as enabling tremendous social mobility in this country. So that's fun. Whenever you've got customers where you feel you're excited about their purpose, it certainly makes building a company easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned earlier before the call that you'd be willing to share a few stats, kind of give everyone an idea of the impact that you're having out there.
Yeah, I started the company in 2011. We really struggled to get the product right in 2012, 2013. I'm happy to talk more about that if you'd like to, but we got the product right, and the first product right in 2014. So by the end of 14, we had 3 or 4 schools. We had the following year in 15, we had maybe 35 or so, and we're up to about 750 now. So on the school side, we've had tremendous growth. We're one of the largest software companies now selling into higher education, probably from a kind of footprint standpoint. We probably are, in the top 10 to 15 software companies selling into higher education, probably top 10 now, and that includes large LMS, learning management systems, and student information systems. And then on the employee front, we have about 170 employees. Most of us are based in Arizona, although salespeople are increasingly more in their territories. And then we've done a couple of smaller acquisitions where we've got people in different, a handful of people in Boston, a handful of people, in the Bay Area, and people have actually scattered more during 2020. Probably that's true of the company. And then on the revenue side, we're about 35 million in annual recurring revenue. We've I think it's the last 4 years now, we've been on the Inc. 5000 for fastest growing companies. So tremendous growth and on employee head count, on revenue, on school count. But it's been a great place to be able to create this category of student financial success where we're doing something that really nobody's ever done before.
Yeah, that's awesome. And congratulations on your success. I mean, I think it's every founder's dream to be in a position where you're at. So fantastic.
Whenever someone says congratulations on your success, I have 2 thoughts when someone says that. First thought is, if I've had one success, it's hiring a great team. I've been fortunate to hire great people at the right time. And then, and that includes people that are able to tell me, hey, why don't you back off on this item? I got it. I got it from here. And so I've learned to let go of more of the company over time and give more autonomy. And when you hire smart, talented, driven people, all of whom value autonomy, and you get that group of people working well together, the job of a founder certainly gets a lot easier. And so that's been a real key ingredient for our success. And then also on the other thing, when I think about when someone says congrats on the success, there's always something broken. There's always something to fix. So I'm happy with our progress, but there's never something that's you don't have to wrench on and get better at.
Right. Good. I appreciate those caveats to success. That's good. So let's take a trip back in time. So I want to go back to the back of napkin moment. You mentioned 2011 a couple of minutes ago, and that it took some time for you to get the product to where you actually had customers in 2014. So I think that we'll examine a lot of that period of time there, and probably a little bit afterwards too. I mean, we're really looking at this area that's before your first outside institutional funding. So what was the first back and napkin idea? I mean, how did this whole thing start? Where did you get your passion for this?
Just to give a little bit of context here. I love vertical SaaS companies, so industry specific SaaS, and I think I'm an example of this pattern. I've worked in and around the financial aid office since the late 90s. And I started a company in 2001 where we had what I would call tech-enabled business process outsourcing. So we weren't selling software, we were selling a service, but we built some technology to enable work faster, simpler, more efficient workflow that enabled us to perform a service. And we did work for about 100 schools around the US and kind of in and around that aid office area. So, and I sold that company in 2006 and was away from the industry for a few years. In 2010, and this gets to the kind of the napkin moment here, what started to become really clear, and this is really hard to believe, but we think about our our smartphones as, it's hard to imagine a time when you didn't have a smartphone, but we're really, like, these smartphones are really not that old, right? And so when you think about in 2010, it occurred to me, I know a lot about the operations of financial aid and how complex it is, and loans, grants, scholarships, how hard this is for both schools and students. And I just wondered, where is mobile in all this? Where is mobile and where's the mobile experience? And then even more broadly, where is cloud in all this?
Mm-hmm.
And there was no, you think about AWS and other kind of cloud offerings. AWS probably isn't much more than maybe 10 years old, maybe 10, 11 years old, which is really hard to believe.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that for sure, but it's probably about that. And so you think about just cloud operations in general and moving things and this migration in the cloud, and higher education was probably slow to that in some respect, a little more, I think, conservative in that regard. But so where was mobile? Where was cloud? Those were things that were on my mind. And then there were some regulatory changes as part of healthcare reform. There was also elimination of fees that were going to private lenders, and so the government side of lending went entirely to a program called direct lending. The federal government was the lender. So a lot of what else was happening prior to that is lenders and guarantee agencies were providing services to institutions. But as part of healthcare reform, there was this huge regulatory burden that shifted on schools. So those three things really were, for me, it was, hey, this is an industry that I know about. Where is mobile? Where is cloud? And how are schools going to manage the regulatory burden that continues to crush them when they don't have partners that are shouldering some of that? So in 2011, we built we built a prototype with the team that I had. We showed that to some customers in 2012. They loved. We had a few customers say that schools that we knew, you bring this to market, we'll buy it. We built the prototype in 2013, and I can say this now, I've said this a lot publicly. We successfully built one of the world's worst pieces of software, and it was rough, and we learned a ton. We got so much right about the workflow and the need. We signed contracts against that, but the architecture was really wrong. And so that was a really tough moment, and we had to rebuild the whole thing. There were lots of team changes that happened then, but those early ideas were right. Product was really wrong. And then once we got it right in 14, we really started to see the kind of the magic of a very purpose-built product that is built for a particular use case. You start to see that really unlock, and we recognize product market fit pretty quick after that.
Okay, so I want to ask you more about that, about the product, building the world's worst piece of software. So I mean, there's what comes to mind for me is, the notion that if you're not, a little bit ashamed of your baby when you release it, then you waited too long, right? So there's kind of the notion of like spending too much time and making something perfect when, before it's in customers' hands. And then there's a notion of, building a product that just doesn't work, right? Or that isn't solving the problem, so to speak. So where were you on that continuum? Like when you say that it was the world's worst piece of software, but yeah, I mean, let's just start with that. Like where were you in that?
I would say it's a really good observation when you think about, product market fit. We definitely waited too long to show the product. I mean, we probably spent $1 million we didn't have because we kept trying to get this thing right. We should have scrapped it and started over earlier. We would have saved certainly hundreds of thousands, possibly $1 million. We would have saved early on if we would have, you know, quit the design, not quit the company, but quit the design of the
Mhm.
product. And part of that was for me and the early team, we were services guys. Like I mentioned, I built a tech-enabled services company. We hadn't built a software company before. We were actually selling software, true multi-tenant software that could scale for hundreds of thousands and millions of students. Then, like tens of thousands of concurrent users. We just hadn't, and millions of records of data, and hundreds of unique workflows all working together at once. And so that was the biggest challenge. We probably didn't have the right team. We had plenty of domain knowledge, and this is a funny story. I think that we tried really hard to be honest and upfront with our customers about what we were building in that period of time. And you're always trying to sell something that you believe is going to work. But we had a really hard time getting the product to work. I mean, I jokingly say this, but we definitively proved that students won't wait 2 minutes for a page load, right? That was how slow the software was. But we were demoing this product and we couldn't get the product demo to work. So we actually took a video of the product and then spliced out the latency on this. And we were
Smart.
demoing off of a video. Now, we weren't trying to deceive people. We were like, hey, this is what we're working on. This is what we're fixing. And we signed contracts off of that. We signed several contracts off of that video. And so that was, that was a big learning for me, that we proved that, hey, people want this thing that we've got. They're willing to buy off of a video because this is purpose built for them and for a specific pain point they have around engaging with their students. But we had the team wrong, including me, right? I hadn't built the right team. To be clear, when I say we had the team wrong, that was my mistake. And we missed a few things that we later got right. But we should have gotten to the architecture problem sooner, and we would have saved ourselves a lot of time, effort, time and headache.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we definitely hear about getting the right architecture in place. I don't think that we talk about that enough, right? Is building the product correctly, not even just the correct product, right? But building the product itself in the right way. So this in hindsight now, right? So if you were to talk to founders today, looking at and they're at the beginning of this process, how do they avoid that pitfall?
Well, I was just talking to someone about this earlier today, but I think there are different founder archetypes or patterns, and I don't think there's any one perfect founder. There are some venture capital firms that say we only invest in technical founders, and there's pros and cons to that. I'm not a technical founder, but I knew this market, I knew the problem, I understood how to take this product to market. But I think one of the things you need to think about is you got to get the right team in place. So if you have a deficiency in an area, you've got to make sure that you are self-aware about that. And that was an area where I wasn't that self-aware, or I didn't have enough information that I should have been more proactive in getting that information. So I think you've got to take an assessment of your team from day one when you're building a company. What am I going to need? What resources, what people, what skills am I going to need to get this product into market? And a lot of people kind of fall back to, I'm going to outsource this thing that I don't have. And I think that's always tough too, because you want to build the muscle internally. But I think you got to take a really a really direct assessment of what are the barriers I'm going to face if I don't have this skill set on my team and in the company as we try to get a product that works and solves a known problem in the market.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really good. I love that you bring it back to the team, right? So, for someone that hasn't done it before, I guess where do you get the list of who you need and what do you need? I mean, it's different for every company, right? So, I mean, if you're let's just say you're self-aware enough to know that you have a deficiency somewhere, what then if you're in that position, how do you identify what the deficiency is so you can fill it?
Well, two things. One of the things I learned is, for the most part, uh, if people are way more willing to help you, to talk to you, to advise you, than you probably think they are if you're a founder. So, just telling people, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? What are problems that you think I might encounter? There's a lot people that are a lot more willing to talk to you. Um, I hesitate to say this because I'm not trying to advertise that I have a bunch of free time because I don't. But people that I know in my network just a little bit, if they will, if someone reaches out to me and says, "Hey, can we get together just for networking?" My answer is almost always no. I don't have time for just random general networking. If someone says, "Hey, I'm trying to figure out this specific problem right now because it's stopping me from doing what I need to do," I almost always have time for that. Time for a call, time to meet, like time to work on a specific problem. And I think most other founders are like that. Most founders want to help their fellow founders against a specific problem, not just general, networking. That's not very constructive in my opinion, but I always want to help a problem solve against a specific problem. So part of what you need to do is like go build your network, go build your informal advisors against that can help you solve specific problems along the way and help you see blind spots that you may not be able to see yourself. So that's always one good tool, and for me, one of those people early on was Clay Mask. He may be on one of your other speakers here, but founder of Keep, formerly Infusionsoft. Clay was like very direct with me early on when we were having problems with the product. I met him and I reached out to him and said, "Hey, I'm having this problem. Can I come talk to you about it?" He was gracious with his time. I met him in his office and for 30 minutes, and uh, I just realized, man, I've got a lot to learn from him, but I also want to be careful with his time. But he was really direct with me and helpful and constructive, and he was a great advisor and happened to be my first investor as well. So he was a great asset to me. I think a lot of founders want to help other founders see their blind spots and move their companies forward.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I love the specificity, right, of asking, of being, authentic and clear with what you are looking for, as opposed to being, let's just chat. Because I totally agree. I'll get hit up to just chat, and it's like, well, I want to help, but I've got a lot going on, and it's hard to balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so can we talk about the time frame of the product for a minute?
Yeah.
So you said you started working on it in 2011, and you got to a point in 2013 that you were kind of getting it out there. As you look at that time frame, what did you learn from going through that product building process? Um, was it supposed to take that long, or I mean, looking back, certainly there's things that you would probably do differently, but as a non-technical founder of a company, how do you analyze those early days of getting that product out?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Every product is different. I mean, keep in mind in our product, this is an enterprise. We are an enterprise. We have an enterprise level software that we are selling to colleges, universities. Every single college we sell to looks at the security and the configuration options within all of our products. And if you're building a consumer product, for example, like I'm a big LinkedIn user, I've never once read the privacy policy for LinkedIn. I've never talked to anybody at LinkedIn, yet I'm a premium user. I have no idea like what they're doing with my data. I'm hopeful not the part of Microsoft, I'm sure, especially they're careful with it. But I'm also not putting a bunch of sensitive data in there, right? Like my financial information or anything like that. So I think that if you're building a consumer product, you can sometimes get a product to market sooner to test engagement. But sometimes in some industries, if you're building an enterprise level product, that's going to have CIO level, seal of approval. It's going to be more expensive to build. Like you're going to spend more money getting to, version 1.0 than you are in other businesses. So there's real variability on depending on the type of product you build, and that variability includes not just time but also money and effort. However, we also had a services business, and I thought at the time the services business was helping to pay the bills and uh, was kind of keeping us going along. But in hindsight, it was a real distraction. It wasn't until our product didn't work in 2013 where I said, and it seemed really counterintuitive at the time, I said, hey, we're going to not only, now things are terrible. We don't have cash. We don't have like customers for this product. I don't have a working product, but we had a little bit of services revenue. And what was really counterintuitive at the time is I decided to take the revenue to zero and say, like, because focus is defined by what you say no to. And I was like, I'm not focused enough on this product. I want to go all in on the product. I want to get it right once and for all. So we dumped the services business and went all in on the product. So, we probably could have gotten our product to market at least 6 months earlier, maybe 12 months, probably more like 12 to 18 months earlier if we had been more focused early. So, and that would have been way better. So anyway, I guess the summary is some products take longer to build than others because you've got to build out more of the, the implementation, the configuration, the security than you do, some products more than others. And, it's easy to think that you've got this other thing that's paying your bills when in fact, and it may be, but that thing is also a distraction and an impediment to getting product market fit. And that was true for me.
Yeah. So let's dive in on that side. It's kind of the other side of this equation of how you made it through this period. So you mentioned that you had the services business that was still operating while you were building. Was that the primary funding mechanism for actually building the product? I mean, did you kind of layer it into the company and feed the mouths of your developers through that process? Did you keep it separate? Or was it your own money? Would you mind sharing some details of how you went through that?
Yeah, it was some of all of that. I'd had the good fortune of selling the company, as I mentioned, in 2006, and I started another, I'll call it boutique, really small, private equity group that was just mostly friends and family money, and so I didn't have never work again money, but I'd made enough to invest in something new, and that's definitely a privilege a lot of people don't have, right? I mean, so I felt really fortunate for that, but this thing took twice as much as I thought it was going to take, and we had the services business that was feeding it as well, but I went all in personally on this, which was really hard to do. It was a lot of stress on me, on my family, and it was really hard to do. But it's hard to not, when you're committed to something, it's hard to let it go. It's hard to, and when you're a founder, when you're an entrepreneur, it's hard not to see it all the way to the end, even if it means like financial destruction. It's just hard to let it go. And that obsession, coupled with resilience, those are attributes that most successful founders have, and most companies have experienced a near-death experience. When you think about it, and we certainly had those. So our funding early on, like 2012, 2013, was my money primarily, and the services business that was funding this, and then we had a little bit of outside money, but not very much. And it wasn't until 2014 where we were able to start, where our first product got into market, and we were starting to raise a little bit of seed capital at that point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you mentioned a couple of attributes that successful founders will demonstrate in those situations. What about the feelings you feel though? I mean, it's one thing to be diligent and make the decision to go all in and do it. But what do you feel? I mean, in the middle of that, that can't be a, flip of the switch discussion, and driving to work one day, I'm just going to throw it all in and not feel anything. So like, what was going through your mind when you got to that point in time where the product wasn't right and you had to go
Yeah.
deeper?
You know, I I uh, I don't think most people who aren't founders won't understand this, what I'm about to say. And I think people that are founders that have built something that's kind of made it through a rough patch will completely understand. But it is lonely and it's isolating. And I felt like a failure, like I remember telling someone, so I don't have the right team, I don't have the right product, I don't have any cash, I don't have any customers. I actually had, and I don't have any customers, but other than that, things are going pretty well. It's like, it was like, I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing. Now, one thing I did have is I had a few customers that, that had actually signed contracts with this old, like lousy prototype, and I knew they wanted it, but that was all I had. It was like contracts, and in fact, one of the customer contracts we had taken a prepayment, and we had used those funds to help fund the development and on the product that didn't work. So it was really hard. And so I felt like an idiot. I felt like I'd had made a little bit of money from a previous sale of my company, and I I was all gone, was all into this. And I felt like a total idiot. I felt like a failure. And, I might get slightly emotional talking about this, but one of the things that I say that even like this has been years now, I still feel like this. One of the things that I really benefited from that is, and not everybody gets to have this, I know, but, I remember telling my wife this once, Jill, and she said a couple different things along the way that were so inspiring. Her comment was, I said, maybe I should just like pack it in. This thing's not working. And she said, and she's not a risk taker. She's not a founder. She's a social worker and she's an awesome mom. I mean, but her world is so different than my world. Right. And, but she said, you're not the kind of person who quits. So I don't see that happening. And that was really inspiring for me, right? Was she didn't say, yeah, you're an idiot, you lost all of our money. She could have said that, right? But she didn't say that. She said, so like, we're going to figure this out. It's going to be fine. And I felt like, okay, I got motivated to do it. So and she's like, hey, it's fine. And at the time, she was, I felt fortunate. She wanted to be home with our kids, and she was, but she said, hey, this isn't a big deal. I can go back to work. It's fine. And that was motivating for me, inspiring for me. Right. So I think sometimes not everybody gets to have that. I recognize that that's a totally unique thing, but having friends and family around you is really important and valuable. And even with that, it's insanely isolating and lonely, and people don't understand the burden that founders shoulder, because I know I've got 10 people, 15 people that are relying on me doing all I can to keep this company going so that they can get a paycheck, right? Even though I'm not getting a paycheck, so that they can get a paycheck and feed their families. And so those are the emotions. That's maybe more detail than you wanted, but those are a lot of emotions, and it is. And I'll tell you, when I look at other founders that I know, I'm always so optimistic about a founder who's had that experience, because I know they're that much more resilient, they're that much more committed, and it's refining. It's refining like nothing else I've experienced, in a hard way, but in a good way.
Mm-hmm. If you were to take a stab at it, I mean, just from your experience, what percentage of founders would you think go through this kind of refiner's experience that you just described in some variation?
I mean, look, it's got to be for companies that are actually successful, like and I say successful, I mean, they're around like 6, 7, 8, 10 years or more, and they've had some scale and some growth, and like the economics of their business work. It's got to approach 100%. Like it's got to, because it's just that hard. And almost nobody builds. I mean, even take a look at something like Slack, right? I don't know Stuart Butterfield. I don't know his experience really. I just from listening to him on podcasts like everybody else, but it's not like he set out to build the largest messaging service. It was a game company,
Yeah.
right? So like he had some previous successes too. So even the most successful companies that we know of, often, almost always, have some story of near failure in their background. So those stories sort of don't get told as much, because when you see Slack's this enormously successful public company that then gets acquired by Salesforce for 27 billion, like the early days of Slack sort of get like forgotten about. But uh, every founder that I know that has built a successful company has had like some pretty dark days and wondering, how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to like build this thing? It's a bunch of pressure on a marriage, on family. So I got to believe it's the vast majority, like 75 to 95% of all successful companies, and the founders that lead those companies through those experiences have had some sort of like near company death experience.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, I mean, just from your experience, there needs to be everyone, let's just assume for a second, everyone will experience something along those lines. It'll come to everybody in a different way. And it sounds like everybody needs a moment that's going to pull them out of it. For you, it sounded like it was that moment with your wife, right? Where, I mean, it's not like she gave you a magic foot massage or something that made you feel,
Yeah.
wonderful, right? I mean, it was the words she said, and it was a boost of confidence to believe in yourself. So, if someone's not married or they don't have that type of relationship in their life, where would you advise someone else to go to help pull you out of the weeds and help you see the big picture again and find that motivation?
Yeah, no, the voice of my wife was awesome, continues to be awesome, but she was hardly the only one. So I mentioned Clayt Mask at Infusionsoft. I was so motivated by Clayt's story. Clayt, I won't go into it here because it's his story, but Clayt had similar stories. In fact, his could have been more painful than mine, for sure. But he had similar stories. And I was so motivated by hearing those stories, and with small words of encouragement. He would also just randomly check in on me every 30 to 60 days. Hey, how are things going? And it was after maybe like 8 to 10 months of that, when things actually started to get right, product started to work. We started to raise a convertible note round, which he was really helpful on, and he was the first investor in it. And so so he was certainly one. Other founders were certainly, there as well. Matt Patinsky is the founder. He was one of the co-founders of Blackboard, the well-known learning management system. Yeah, Matt's the CEO of Parchment, highly successful, credentials company, also here in Arizona. Matt was an early investor. He was on my board for years. Matt has always been like direct with me and encouraging at the same time. And so other people like that have kind of lived it. And I think you've got to build. You can't wait for someone to build your advisory network for you. You got to go build your own advisor network. Really, you've got to. You got to reach out to others, and that's hard to do when you're not feeling great about how things are going at the moment. But we got to go out and reach out and particularly engage with people around trying to solve the problem right in front of me. What do I need to get right today and this week in order for my business to last one more week? Right? Sometimes that simple.
Yeah. Oh, I love the idea of, being able to reach out to other founders, and people that have been through the trenches before and to proactively do it. You never want to be completely alone. Get inside your own head for too long and you'll drown in your own negative thinking.
Right.
Oh, that's very good. So last question I want to ask you just about how you kind of bootstrapped your way through those early stages. And then I'm going to give you a couple minutes to just offer some advice. You mentioned you were privileged to be able to kind of, finance yourself and put yourself through that. You put yourself in the shoes of someone that maybe doesn't have those resources per se, maybe doesn't have another company to, to support their efforts and whatnot, right? So what advice would you give to them for getting a company through these stages before you're funded? How do you survive that financially?
I didn't, two thoughts on that real quick. One, I didn't talk about this. I talked about just the very early days, but I also started to build some real muscle because I needed to. I didn't have it around capital raising process. So I raised one of the largest convertible note rounds that I've known about. It was close to $4 million of convertible note round, and then that converted into a $7.5 million Series A later. So I don't mean to suggest that this was all the capital we needed. I won, and then I raised the $10 million Series B, and then a couple other really large rounds, including $120 million round with Dragoneer this year. Early on, your question about what I would advise people to do. So I'll say it one more time. I said I think earlier, but focus is defined by what you say no to, and I'd tell founders, and I'm saying this because I continue to make mistakes around focus, but you should be saying no to most things, right? You can say yes to lots of things. You should be saying no to most things. What you say yes to, defines like what your focus is. So if you can get rid of like what do you need? What's the shortest path to getting a customer to buy this product or pay for this, so I can get real proof and real data about, is my product right? Is my pricing right? And get rid of everything else that you don't need, to do that. So I would say focus, especially if when you have no resources, you can only be focused. But I've seen lots of companies that have no resources want to be focused on, hey, there's this giant market opportunity over here and this other market opportunity over here. And those things are true, but you don't have resources to pursue those opportunities. You need to pick one pick a tiny market, the tiniest market you can, and go own it and prove that you've got something there. And these other market opportunities will open up for you over time.
I love it. Yeah, extreme focus. I love it. Well, let's end this with just some final thoughts from you. I mean, you're looking at an audience that has, it's either in the trenches, the earliest trenches right now, or is thinking about jumping in. What would you want them to know about how to find success if you were looking back and examining your own experience?
Let me just say, first of all, and I know that some people that aren't company builders or aren't founders kind of roll their eyes when I say this, but I think building companies is just an unbelievably important job in this world. And I don't mean, it's you think about how much time most of us spend in a day. Most of us spend our time at work, in a job, interacting with people there. And so as a founder, one of the opportunities and obligations we have is to create great places to work for all sorts of people, places that are inclusive, places that give people purpose and have people feel good about the work that they do. And that's not easy to do. I'm always trying to get better at this. I've got areas I'm working on this right now. But I hope that people, when you go into founder mode and you are committed to building a company, recognize that you're doing something super important, not just building a product that solves a problem for your customers, but you're creating a place where people want to come and be part of your purpose and your mission, and they're joining a cause. And so I would just that's one thing I want to tell people or help people remember, that don't forget you're creating something amazing for other people. And I just think it's one of the world's most important works we can do.
That's awesome. A question that came in deals directly with that. I mean, really, you're building a culture, right, around the world that you are envisioning, right, and the people that are going to help you build it. So, I mean, did you do anything specifically to help craft that culture, or do you feel that culture just kind of stems from the way the company runs and you can't control it?
Well, I had someone tell me once at one of my first employers, that they said, I don't think this company has a culture. They were, referring to the company we worked at. And I said, hey, that's not true. And I rattled off a handful of things. Every company has a culture. If you are not intentional, it forms on its own, right? So one of the things I did early on was, especially, and this wasn't before we had product market fit, but as it became clear this is going to work, if you're going to scale something, you've got to have total clarity around your purpose, around your values, and around your mission. And I defined a mission as what are we going to accomplish in the next 3 to 5 years? It's time bound, and I always want a time bound mission. So we talk about our purpose is kind of our North Star. We help schools change lives. And then we've got a handful of values that originated, 7 values that originated from all of our employees and an exercise we went through. But values are really about the behavior. And this is, you can see this on our website, but things like we love our customers and they know it. And if our customers don't know that we love them, then like we need to change. Or we're nice and we take care of each other. I didn't want to work at a place where people are mean. And so I wanted to create a place where people are nice. And I also want people to be direct, but so anyway, those are things I think if you don't have the values and the purpose and the mission well defined, then culture really can get sideways, and it can get sideways anyway. So even with those things, but if you can create clarity around authentic purpose, mission, and values, and values in particular become sort of self-policing mechanisms if they're real. And that's something we've leaned into quite a bit.
Awesome. Well, Gregg, thanks again for taking time to tell your story and share the path you took to get where you're at today. I mean, you're building an incredible company, and the rest of us as founders have a lot to learn from you. So thanks for sharing.
Well, thanks for all you do for the founder community in general, and excited to be on the Founder Saga story here.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, thanks everybody. For everyone else that's on the line right now, we have another interview here coming up right after this with the founders of Homey, if you've seen their billboards around town. So we'll be pulling some stories out of them as well. Thanks everyone. And again, Gregg, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.